live. Today we are going to be talking English because we are doing a live with a person of mine who's actually on United States. So let me welcome to Jordan Gage. Jordan, how are you today?
Good, good. How about yourself, Hugo?
I'm very good, thank you. Thanks
Good.
for sharing with us.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, Jordan, just to be in the context, we are going to be talking today about like professional career and employment on United States. So first of all, can you tell us about yourself, about your experience? Where are you right now, so people can know you?
Sure, you bet. I'm coming to you from sunny central Wisconsin. If you're not familiar with where Wisconsin is, it's one of the top northern parts of the state. We're a big manufacturing state, also a big dairy and agricultural state. Uh, I'm the director of administration for a company called CFR. We're a large stainless steel process equipment integrator. So we do manufacturing, engineering, controls, field installation for mainly large food and dairy customers. We have about 370 employees. I've been with this organization for just over 3 years as a director of administration. So I oversee our human resources, our talent acquisition department, accounts receivable, payable, accounting, payroll, things of that nature. I've spent another 5 years with an affiliated company with CFR, also in the same location as a director of operations. And I had a little break there as well in law enforcement. So I currently work part-time in law enforcement. I spent several years in patrol for a city near here in central Wisconsin. I also have a background in retail store management. So I'm sure you're all familiar with Best Buy in some way, shape, or form. In my early and mid 20s, I spent a lot of time in sales management, employee performance management, and development. All in all, I have just about 8 years of human resources related experience and 15 years in employee hiring, training, development, and performance management.
Okay, that's a very good experience and a lot of background, as I can tell, right? So, what do you think, Jordan, about the current situation of deployment on the U.S.? Is there a lot of job offers? Is it there a lot of professionals looking for a new challenge? What do you think about that?
It's a really unique circumstance. I can say that I haven't experienced a time like this last 2 years in my working life. And I would say that my parents and probably my parents' parents would agree that this is a very unique time that we haven't really seen before.
Wow.
So of course the labor situation that we're in today was coming down the pipeline, but I say the pandemic really accelerated some things happening that have taken place in the last 2 years that have made it such a unique, aggressive, competitive job market. So the way that it is in the United States right now, we're actually losing somewhere along the lines of 10,000 baby boomers. If you're unfamiliar with the term baby boomer, it would be
Yes,
people
we
that were
are.
born in the 40s, 50s, right? We're losing 10,000 a day that are leaving the workforce and retiring. At
Wow.
the same time, with some of the changes that have been brought on by the pandemic, the big thing that has changed has been the arrival of massive hybrid and remote job opportunities.
Yes.
So there's people transitioning and working in other states, other regions, getting opportunities to do professional work that they had not previously had because of immobility and being planted in say one area. So at the same time, we simply just don't have the population growth that we've had previously. I recently read an article, Hugo, that provided some data points that if our labor rate continued on the same trend that it's been at for the last 40 years, for the next 40 years, our birth rate would be at zero point 0. Now, of course, that's very
Wow.
unlikely to happen. But at the end of the day, we kind of have that perfect storm of um, a major exodus from the workforce, not as many professionals entering the workforce. And then there's just a lot of job movement. So the year 2021 was referred to as the Great Resignation. That's a topic we've kicked around a lot in the US. And it's simply put, people are out there, they realize that the job market is super aggressive, it's opportunistic. wages and opportunities have been just on fire here for the last couple of years. So there's more people than ever leaving their job and going and seeking other opportunities, which creates unique challenges in every industry, every company, regardless of where you're at and what you're doing. No one's immune to that. So turnover is higher, retention is more challenging, and just because there's more applicants now than ever, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily easier to find the professionals you need to work in your organization. And the reason I talk about there being more opportunities than ever is because even though there's 2 open jobs for every unemployed person, there's so much movement that you're constantly seeing a merry-go-round of shorter tenure and people leaving organizations. So it's a really interesting time, to sum it up.
Wow. So, I was talking in other lives that we have been doing last week, and we were talking about that even if there's a lot of job opportunities for professionals to find a new challenge, even though it's not that easy to find a new job. And we were also talking about that the first time that we met, Jordan. It's not that easy to find a job especially in the United States, right?
Yeah, I mean,
it's what you mentioned before.
Yeah, I think it's how I would phrase it is it's easy to find the jobs.
Okay.
It's hard to differentiate yourself as a candidate. Okay. So there's a lot of jobs out there right now. There's a lot of opportunities. But here's the thing now, with some of these professional remote work opportunities, it's not uncommon to see a job, say, post on LinkedIn, for example, a remote opportunity, and to see 300 plus candidates in one day. So the jobs are out there. There's a lot of great opportunity out there, but it's about how do you differentiate yourself as a candidate, because it's becoming more and more difficult to navigate through so many different candidates. So I think people get frustrated because they've been told for 2 years that, hey, it's a great job market. You can go do anything, work anywhere, do whatever you want. It's a great job market. And then they get disappointed when they apply for 10 jobs and don't get a phone call back at one of them. So.
Wow. You keep me thinking about that one.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting, and it's a new issue because previously, before the advent of remote and hybrid jobs, you'd be competing with applicants from, say, a 50-mile, 30, 50, 100-mile radius of where you're at. Now I could live in Miami and go and work in New York remotely. I could work in Washington. I could work in California. So it's a hyper competitive market right now.
Do you think, Jordan, that many companies are preferring to hire remote professionals, not hybrid? I mean, mostly to remote to have that like a full coverage, not only in the US, they can even charge it to Latin America or Europe, so they can set up a team. We also have a team in Latin America working for Potencia Laboral. We have people in Chile, Argentina, Colombia, Panama, and even in the States. So that, as you mentioned before, really opens a lot of opportunities for companies and professionals, which really makes a new market for job search, where, of course, as you mentioned before, you're going to have to know how to differentiate yourself from other appliance.
Absolutely. That's everything right now. And I mean, and if you spend any time on LinkedIn or any other professional networking sites, for example, there's still a pretty healthy debate on remote work versus in office. And I think remote work is here to stay. I think companies are navigating through some of the challenges that it creates in some instances. And I think it's certainly here to stay. So I think that opportunity is going to exist going forward. I don't think we're going to go back and see remote work opportunities disappear. I just don't think that's the case.
Yeah, me too. I fully agree with you. Also in Chile and in Latin America, we are seeing a lot of companies that are applying the hybrid mode. Like you have to go to the office for a couple of days, and then you're gonna have to be working at your place in your home. But do you think also for management positions, is this gonna be applied like the remote work preference from companies?
From what I've seen, it seems to be consistent throughout the organization's hierarchy, from entry level, mid range, all the way up to executive. It's not, if you went, Hugo, right now and spun through and just search director or manager through a LinkedIn or an Indeed job search, there's going to be plenty of opportunities that are out there that are remote leadership positions. So I think when you get at that higher end, it doesn't seem to be any different.
And that also is going to come with a lot of new skills required for professionals. Like you're going to have to be able to lead some remote teams, which is not the same in the situation that you're working with the people next to you. So you can go and have a coffee and talk and go into a meeting room and have a quick talk about something. It's going to be all different. I mean, the skills are going to be different as well, right?
Absolutely. I don't think that, I think what you're going to see, and it certainly may already exist, I just haven't been exposed to it, but I think you're going to start seeing educational opportunities that focus on effective remote work. I've seen some roles and some training programs that are specifically aimed at working efficiently in a remote work, leading in a remote work scenario. So sometimes it takes a little bit of time for those training and educational opportunities to catch up to where we're at. But I wouldn't be surprised if you start seeing a big transition in people just having to learn how to work and lead in a remote or a hybrid environment.
Okay. Jordan, can we talk a little bit about Wisconsin? Most of the people, I mean, there's a lot of Latin American professionals, even on the States, they're looking for a new opportunity. Maybe they don't know pretty well about Wisconsin. How's it to be working about there, living in Wisconsin? What about the dynamics of having like a job over there?
Sure. Wisconsin's it's a great place for a number of reasons. Where, like I said at the beginning, Wisconsin is a manufacturing leader. We're very so in the engineering manufacturing space, Wisconsin has a lot of really fantastic opportunities. We have some great companies that call Wisconsin home. But there's also a big opportunity because you're familiar with the term brain drain, Hugo? Have you ever?
Brain drain. Yes, I am, but maybe you can explain a little bit for
Yeah,
professional that doesn't know about
yeah,
that.
because it's an interesting term. So the term brain drain relates to individuals born and raised growing up in Wisconsin, going to college, and then leaving the state as soon as they graduate to go and find other
Okay.
opportunities, other places. So that we have that dynamic in Wisconsin. And Wisconsin's a fantastic state to raise a family, to look for good quality work, and there's opportunities because that's been something that Wisconsin's been actively trying to mitigate. Is some of the why are our kids growing up going to school and then leaving the state to go work, live somewhere else. So we're really focused on manufacturing. Of course, dairy and egg is big in Wisconsin. As far as living in Wisconsin, you do have to tolerate some snow. We have about 4 to 6 months of very cold,
Okay.
snowy
Some
weather.
snow. Some
Oh yeah,
snow.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, no doubt. But the nice thing about Wisconsin is you get to enjoy all 4 seasons. We have a wonderful fall. Winter can go a little long sometimes, but spring and summer are fantastic. I mean, right today it's going to be 85 degrees and beautiful.
Okay.
So yeah, opportunity wise, look no further than Wisconsin. There there's a lot of opportunities. It's competitive in that manufacturing space. Uh, so, I'm born and raised in Wisconsin, so I'm a Wisconsin fan all the way.
Oh, okay. I got it. You didn't through the brain drain, right?
That's correct. I kept my brain here.
Okay. Brilliant. Do you see a lot of Latin American professionals working over there in Wisconsin, or it's not that common to see it?
Yeah, I guess I haven't had a overly large exposure to Latin American professionals in our industries. With that being said, being coming from the administrative side, I couldn't tell you if there's a lot of our customers and vendor partners and whatnot that do have that dynamic. But certainly the opportunities there. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I think it's very important to talk about it because, I'm setting up my operations in Miami. We have the company set over there. There's a lot of companies that are really interested in working with like multicultural professionals, like Latin American specials. But I think that's important anywhere, anyway, to mention that there are another possibilities on the US, not only to be thinking about Miami, Florida, even to think about new states like Wisconsin, as you mentioned before. And I think that maybe professionals related to production, to operations, like optimization of the process, I'm gonna have a good fit on Wisconsin because I believe on what I've heard that those should be a good like profiles for searching for a new job over there, right?
Absolutely. I mean, if you're especially looking at the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields, if you're professional in any of those categories, those are huge opportunities in the U.S. for that. But I think it really any professional level, the opportunities there through every region, every state. There's a need that can be met there. So
Great, excellent. I think there's a lot of information on your side, Jordan. I really appreciate it. So
yep.
let's talk about the job search process. You were mentioning before that if you look on LinkedIn, you're going to see a lot of job offers where you can apply in the remote way. But what do you think about the issues that most of the professionals go when they are looking for a new job? Like, don't have a resume like optimized. I don't have like clearance about the skills that they have, about the experience. What do you think about the issues of the professionals? We're looking at a new
Sure.
job, right?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I think some of the things are, um, in a lot of cases, it's keeping those skills sharp, even when you're employed and as you're going through. Like, you don't want to be in a position where, say, you've worked at the same place for 10 years, and then you find yourself looking for a job, and yep, I don't have a resume, I haven't documented my training, experience, qualifications, education for a long time. How do I put that into a package so I can market myself well in front of an employer for a job that might have, like we said, 100, 200, 300 candidates, right? So it's all about differentiation. How are you going to differentiate yourself as a candidate? Imagine being a hiring manager or somebody in talent acquisition, posting a job and receiving 300 applicants to go through. How are you going to filter that out to a workable number? We know we're not going to do 300 interviews, right? We know we're not going to do 100 interviews. So what parameters do you set? And I think what a lot of it comes down to is um, how you shape and frame up your experiences and what makes you unique as a candidate, but also showing that you can put the effort into the application process and that you have a genuine desire to work for that organization. And I'll kind of take you through. And now, one thing to understand is there's no two hiring managers or recruiters or talent acquisition specialists that view things exactly the same way, right? So
Yeah.
I'll give you kind of my perspective and take you through an example of how candidates differentiate themselves. And it's not necessarily the way, but it's a way. And I'll share that with you a little bit from this side of this side of the curtain, right? So recently opened up an office position. It was not remote or hybrid. It was on site here in our office. And I received 24 applicants. Okay. 24 applicants that I had to work through and determine with our talent acquisition specialist who we were going to interview, who was going to make it to that interview process, because we weren't interested in conducting, of course, 24 interviews, right? So the ones that, if I take that stack of 24 applicants, I'm looking first for the ones that followed the instructions in the ad, in the hiring ad that was actually posted just on social media, Facebook and LinkedIn. And I asked them to send a resume to our talent acquisition specialist's email address. And of the 24 applicants, 12 had sent us resumes, and 12 had just submitted the quick application on social media that had very incomplete information. So now I'm kind of whittled down to a group of a dozen people that have submitted resumes and completed the application process. Of those 12, about 8 of them submitted a nice complete resume that was formatted well, accurately depicted their experience and education. And then of those 8, 6 of them also provided cover letters that were fine-tuned to our organization. And it wasn't a paragraph that said, hey, my name's John Smith, I'm looking for a job. They were tailor fitted to, here's why I'm applying for this role at this time with this company. And I find those stories compelling. I can't help but read them and be interested into the angle that person took during the application process. And then a few of the candidates had submitted quality letters of recommendation from previous coworkers, previous managers, things of that nature. And I was impressed by some of those. So the individuals that provided good quality, complete documents that tells me a story about who that person is and what they stand for, those are the ones that are getting differentiated and selected at the top to start, looking at interviewing and reviewing their information. There are a lot of old, I'll call them old and maybe even outdated cultural norms out there regarding your resume should only be this long. It shouldn't be any longer. Your job experience shouldn't go back past 10 years. Your cover letter should be 2 paragraphs. I say throw some of those things out the window. Just be accurate, thorough, and complete. Put some passion into the into the application process, and that's going to get you really far. I think that there's been some, with the job market being so competitive, I think there's been some bad behaviors that have kind of been learned through this, which is give me a 1-button click to apply. I'm not customizing anything for this opportunity. I'm just clicking to submit my application and moving on and hoping I get a phone call. Well, if that's what you're doing and there's 300 applicants, you're not going to get a phone call. Employers are looking for employees that have a genuine curiosity and an interest in working for that organization. So I suggest that as a good rule, if you're not passionate enough about the opportunity to put the energy in to differentiate yourself as a candidate, you probably shouldn't be seeking out that opportunity. And that's kind of a hot take. There might be some folks that see this or watch this and say, I don't agree with them on all those points. And that's fine. That's just kind of, those are points that are near and dear to me as somebody that's been in a hiring role for a long time.
Great. Well, a lot of issues you addressed. It really makes sense because we were doing some deep investigation on the States about the job offers that we got. And most of the companies that have job offers published on LinkedIn address you to apply in a different website. So you have to feel like it's not a very short form that you have to fill, because they're really searching for professionals that are really interested about the job, not just to be pushing the button and apply to the offer. Really makes sense.
Absolutely. I just that's again, that's the only way for these organizations, especially the ones offering remote opportunities. That's their only way of filtering out down to a workable number of candidates, right? Is by having a process where they have to put some effort into that. But the point is, a quality resume is important. One with good formatting that accurately depicts who you are and what you stand for, what you've done. That cover letter, in my opinion, should always be drafted unique for that opportunity that you're pursuing and going after.
Right.
That's a big part of it as well.
Okay, Jordan, we have a question right here from John. He's asking you, how many pages are the standard for a CV experienced candidate?
Sure, that's a good question. I mean, there's not a one size fits all answer for that, because I suppose it depends on the person, their background, and also, the position that they're going for as well. I mean, my cover letter might look different if I'm applying for an entry level position with an organization. That might look very different than if I'm applying for an advanced director or executive level position. as a standardized rule that I do agree with, that cover letter should certainly not exceed a page or even a few paragraphs for the average person in the average role. I think your goal, and again, I want to be careful because these are not necessarily strict rules, but if you can go into it with a nicely done, well formatted 1-page resume with a cover letter that's several paragraphs, 2/3 of a page that you feel is complete and expresses your interest, desire, and qualifications for the role, I think you're in really good shape. And it's okay for a resume to go over a page. However, I would caution it shouldn't be your one last sentence that goes into that second page. If you're going to use that second page, you want it to be robust and complete. So your resume should be 1 complete page or 2 complete pages. You wouldn't want to have a partial there. Those are kind of standard guidelines. I wouldn't expect to see a cover letter that is a page or more, generally speaking.
Me neither. So here, this is an important thing about the States. So here in Latin America, it's not very common. It's not very common to see professionals applying to jobs, presenting the job letter. I mean, like the instruction letter. It's not very used here in Latin America, but I think. Hey, hear me now? Do you hear me
Now I can hear you.
Okay, it's not very common to use the cover letter. Yeah, what I was saying before, that it's not very common to use the cover letter in the appliance that you do here in Latin America, but it's, as I can tell, it's very common to use it in the United States. So
It is.
if we can talk about the cover letter, Jordan, is there like a structure that most of professionals should be using? Not to mention, like, I'm seeing some cover letters before, and most of the professionals just talk about the studies, the academics, but they don't usually talk about what you mentioned before. Is that what about my fit with the company that I'm applying? What about the position? What about the experience that I have? And it's common with what the company needs.
That's exactly what you're after. You're trying to take a personalized fit approach with the employer. So the cover letter is certainly not a spot where you are recapping what's in your resume. A cover letter might be as simple as formatting it as, to the hiring manager. I'm applying for this position. I feel that I'd be a good fit for these reasons. I feel, maybe maybe you've done some research on the organization and you've gotten to a point where you can speak to some background points of the role and the company itself. Maybe you've gotten the name of the hiring manager so you can address it directly to them. And it's basically just a quick introduction of why your experiences, your education, and what's becoming increasingly important is, why are you a cultural fit for that organization? What do you know about that organization, and why are you a fit? Because work is becoming, it's more personal. Are you going to fit into our organization and what we stand for? So that's just a brief opportunity to try to connect those dots. But I would just be careful to not use a cover letter as a opportunity just to rephrase everything in your resume, right? That's not the intention of it.
Yeah, I think that most of the recruiters expect that when the professionals apply to the positions, show the interest on the position and the company. I think that's the most important point of any cover letter that any professional should be doing for a job.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that really gives candidates a leg up is if they've made some efforts. I had a candidate recently that during the application process had reached out to an employee that they found on LinkedIn from our organization that was in a similar role that the person was applying for, and asked them, "Hey, can I have a quick phone call with you to ask you some questions about the organization? about the role, about what's important to your company, and they were able to tie that into their cover letter. And I was very impressed by that. Very impressed by that.
Wow.
So learn something about the organization. If you go into an interview, one of the questions you'll face is, why this role, why this company, why here? And if you have no background or no information in the company, it's going to be really hard to address that question.
Okay. So we were talking about the applying process. We're talking also about the job letter, the cover letter that any professional should be using for applying or for a new job. Can we talk a bit about the interview process? What about the interview? Which are, in your point of view, the most common issues that any professional can make during a job interview?
Sure. The one that I think right away that comes off the bat is that just remember that being nervous has never helped one person accomplish one thing,
Yeah.
right? Go into it knowing that in today's job market, especially, know that they want to hire you. They need people. They want to find a reason to bring you onto their organization, and it's your chance just to seal that deal. But go into it as much as possible as it's an opportunity for to have a conversation about the job and to see if it's a fit both ways. And just remember that you are interviewing them just as much as they are interviewing you. So part of the benefits of having a really competitive job market out there is that you get some more input on where you work. You don't just need to go and find an open job and apply an interview. So just be confident going into it that you're there and you have a reason for being there, and just go into it to eliminate as much nervousness as possible, and understand that in most cases they're not going to be trying to trick you or confuse you or to get you to mess up. It's a kind of more of an open dialogue, and at least in my experiences. I know there's organizations that have some different approaches in the interview process, but secondly, remember that it's okay not to have an immediate answer right off the bat. It's okay to come back to a question. It's okay to put thought into a question and come back to it or think on it for a moment. They don't expect you just to be able to rattle off a perfect answer to every question. If you ever find yourself in a situation where you're interviewing and you're hit with a question that you perceive as difficult or something maybe you don't have an answer for right away, I'd much rather hear a well thought out answer to that question than just the first thing that comes to your head, right? So it's okay to come back and take time on your answers. The last pointer that I would give that I am pretty passionate about is know what you're applying for and know as much background as you can get about the organization. That will get you very far versus other candidates. I always ask every candidate, why do you want to work here? What specifically drew you to our organization? And I'm always amazed by the spectrum of answers I get. I've interviewed people that have no idea what we even do. I've interviewed people that have no real value that they can add to the role that they're applying for because they didn't do the background on the role. And then I've also had people just give fantastic answers about, I know your company's been around since this date. I know that you guys have experienced exponential growth. I've heard really good things about your organization. Here's what I understand about how this role works. And those are the answers that really cement in that perception of you as a candidate. Those are really important things in my opinion, as I think about hiring individuals. So I would say those would be the main points that I would focus on. And just remember too, that how you present yourself is still really important. I've seen that kind of fall off in the last couple of years since the job market's gotten so competitive. Just remember, the job market's not always going to be like this. So don't let your skills of presentation be dull just because the job market's been really good for a few years.
Okay, so the question, tell me about yourself, is a very common question in your interviews.
It is, yes, it is. I try to leave it a little bit more open-ended because people usually go to a really canned answer when you ask them. You know, they have kind of these 3 or 4 lines that they go about. I like to ask people just what they're passionate about because it's a really open-ended topic. And I'm also trying to get, you know, we're hiring a person that we're going to spend more time with than we spend with our families, right? You probably spend more time in the office or working than you do with your, you know, with the family. So
Yes.
I want to know what makes this person tick. How do they judge a successful versus unsuccessful day? What are they working for? So I like to leave it kind of open-ended. What's passionate about them? What motivates them? You're going to see more open-ended questions nowadays than the standard tell me about yourself. How do you measure what a good day at work is? What frustrates you? What are you passionate about? Those kind of things are what you're seeing more of.
Okay, we have a question right here, Jordan. Carlo is asking, what kind of value do you give do you consider to the skills-based interview? That's the competency interview.
Sure.
It's kind of a technical question, you know?
Yeah, you know, and that really varies on the role itself. If the competency value, the competency or skills evaluation is going to be a really big factor in engineering, and I'm just kind of talking specific to our organization in this case, engineering, automation, controls, programming, those more technical, advanced fields. That competency is going to be a really big factor. So I would say it's kind of role specific. You know, that competency, for example, like in an office setting, I'm a big believer on that we can hire for character and train for skill, whether it's talent acquisition, customer service, things of that nature. But if you're in an advanced field, that skills evaluation is pretty critical.
So it's gonna depend especially on the position that you're gonna be recruiting for, the skills-based interview that you're gonna be doing. But this is always part of any recruitment process to do an competencies interview or a skills-based interview from your point of view.
In my experience, not necessarily. I've had we've hired for positions with and without it. I've been in interview processes myself where it has been used and not been used. It just depends on what emphasis the organization puts onto it. If you have a organization that has a role where they're going to get dozens or even triple-digit candidates, you're likely to see a competency interview or a competency or skills evaluation just aimed at whittling that pool down of candidates, right? So I've been in a hiring process that had a skills evaluation, and that goal was literally just to get that talent, that candidate pool from 100 down to 50. You know, they're just trying to kind of filter down into a workable number of applicants. So what I think tends, at least to speak on from my experience, what tends to be more important is just to see how many different preferred and required qualifications that individual meets. People are mistaken frequently where they'll look at a job description, whether it's on whatever forum, and they'll see that they have, 7 out of 10 of the preferred qualifications, but they have 4 out of 5 of the required ones. And because they're missing a required qualification, they forego applying for that opportunity. Just remember that in a lot of cases, those are wish lists. That employer's likely not going to get 100% of their preferred or required qualifications. So don't let awesome opportunities pass you by just because you don't meet every qualification, preferred or required.
Okay, brilliant. What about the job reference, Jordan? are really being used on the recruitment process, or is just something that when you feel like you need some kind of confirmation on the professional that's applying for any job position that you may have, you go and you check the job reference of the professionals? I'm
You
talking
know,
about the experience before they have. I mean, why they leave the company, about the challenge that they have in the previous job.
sure. In the U.S., we're a litigious society, right? There's always many lawsuits and issues with everything that we do, right? So references have become something that people are pretty guarded on giving or asking for
Mm.
because if you get called for a reference and give a good, bad, or indifferent reference, that actually can open up some small windows of liability based on how that employee performs or if something critical happens with that employee. For example, if I get called for a reference, the only thing I will verify is that they worked here and the dates, and that you're
Oh,
seeing
wow.
more and more of that, to the point where calling references I would argue isn't a very common occurrence in many places anymore, just because people are very, very guarded on giving them. That would mostly apply to former employers. If somebody provides a reference of, say, a professor or a former coworker, um, some other networking connection that they have, I think that there's more genuine feedback there. But you're going to find a fewer and fewer number of employers that are willing to give any sort of reference, whether it's good or bad.
Okay, okay, I got it. So they're only going to be used to check on dates and position that you have been developing on the previous company. Okay, that's
Yep,
right. Okay.
that's still taking place, and that's pretty commonplace to say yes, they worked here from March of 2010 to April of 2014, but that's about what you'll get from most employers of any size. Um, so that's becoming something that I would still probably list and have available, because if you do work for an employer that does, I recently gave a reference for a friend and former coworker of mine that was relatively in depth. So it still happens. I think it's just becoming less frequent.
Okay, okay. We have another question here, Jordan. I don't know if the term is properly used, but Juan is asking about the blacklist. That's mean when some professionals can't be working on some companies, or even when they apply, they are not considered by the company because they have been selected to not be recruited for any kind of position. Is there a thing that's being used in the US? It's very common. It's very like
Um,
hiding.
I would say at the individual company level, they might have do not hire lists just based on, let's say, they left on bad terms. They
Okay.
worked and some they got terminated because of conduct or left with no notice or something like that. That is a commonplace for some employers that might have a do not hire list. The only other thing I can think of is that if an employee is working, and I don't know if they do this in Chile or Latin America, but a lot of employees in some instances are on non-compete agreements.
Yeah, yeah, they do. Yeah,
Yep. So
it's very common
there's
to
some of
find
those
here as well.
aspects where we might not let them participate in a eligibility process just because they're locked up on a non-compete. But those would be really the two instances from my experience that you would have specifically on a do not hire list. Is either they were an employee that left on bad terms that we don't want to rehire in the future, but just individual external candidates. I can't speak for all recruiters and all organizations. There might be some of that, but not anything that I actively use or would have in use at our organization.
Okay. Well, I have been talking to another recruiters on the U.S. In some states. I don't know if it's having the same on Wisconsin. It's not allowed to ask a lot of questions related to the age, to the ethnic, to the tell me about your family, how many kids do you have, are you married, or stuff like that. Is that still a thing on Wisconsin for recruiters that you cannot ask some personal questions about the professionals?
All over the U.S.
Okay,
That
I
is the
got it.
case. Yeah, that is the case where you are not allowed to ask questions about really what is the terminology is about membership in a protected class. So it's usually limited to age, race, creed, nationality, um, you know, pregnancy, residency, things of that nature. There usually are what would be forbidden to ask or to infer or inquire about in any way, shape, or form. There are times where candidates speak to those items like, hey, I have, yeah, I mean, I have a candidate that says, hey, I have 4 kids, how's your health insurance plan or whatnot. When candidates make those statements, you just of course are not allowed to discriminate against any candidate based on membership in any of those candidates or any of those protected classes, that is. So that's governed actually by a federal body called EEOC. So yeah, those things are all out of bounds. Discrimination during the application and hiring process, and then of course continued through the period of employment when they're hired as well.
Oh, so things are really different here on Latin America. When you go to an interview, they even ask you about your parents, about your kids, your wife. What does your wife do? Your husband? What the profession of your parents? What kind of business do they have? It's very a different thing on the U.S. because, and I think it's very good as well because when you're hiring someone, talking about the person and the professional should be quite enough to see if he can fit or not into a position that you have. It shouldn't be needed to talk about other things related to not the professional issue, you know. So I think the laws on the federal issue is very good for professional because it forced the companies and the recruiters to do the job basically and mostly focused on the professional, on the experience, on the skills, on what they are looking for a new job or for a new company. So I think that's a very good thing to do, and I think that's something that Latin America should be learning from US.
Absolutely. Our laws in that regard are, I consider those to be just common. The rule is common decency. Be decent, be fair, be objective, and don't discriminate against people. So the law, of course, is complex and there's a lot of nuance to it. But at the end of the day, it basically just says be decent with people, choose the best person because of who they are and what they stand for versus some other attribute about who they are. So I agree with you 100%. Those laws have been protecting people for decades, and it's a very it gives me pride to hear that we're on the forefront of that and that we're doing well in that space.
Okay. Jordan, what about the people that are looking for a new job and a new opportunity on the US and they want to know about Wisconsin and apply for some companies over there? What would you suggest them in order to find a new job opportunity in there? Just use LinkedIn? Is there any other way where they can apply and search for opportunities over there?
I think that LinkedIn is a fantastic opportunity for at the professional level, your more professional level jobs. I think it's a great platform and it's very easy to use and to navigate through. At the same time, there's no one size fits all approach. There's plenty of organizations out there that are not posting job opportunities on LinkedIn. The biggest job site that and I'm assuming it's the same in Latin America, but the hottest job site right now by far is Indeed.
Oh, indeed. Well,
Indeed.
here in Chile, Indeed is very used, but it's between Indeed and LinkedIn, to be honest.
Yeah, and yeah, those two are popular, but most people, in fact, we had just kind of surveyed a small portion of our employees at our recruitment staffing meeting about if you were going to go find a new job today, where would you go? And the overwhelming answer was Indeed. So
Indeed.
that's kind of Facebook is becoming more popular for posting jobs as well. We've used Facebook quite a bit as an advantage because it's getting in front of a lot of passive candidates that aren't actively out there looking. So it's important to be looking in multiple places, because there's many times where we'll post an ad on Facebook or Indeed and not LinkedIn, or LinkedIn and not Indeed. It's kind of all over the place. So make sure you're not limiting yourself to one narrow method.
Okay, Instagram not be used, right? It's not the part of the deal.
We're not using it. We haven't used it. In fact, to be honest, I've never been on Instagram myself. Maybe I need to look into that. But there's if you think about it, media has become very fragmented over the years. It used to be, you looked in the newspaper, you watched your normal TV channel, and then listened to the radio. And now there's just so many different ways. So be as diverse as possible when you're looking for those opportunities. Most importantly, network and talk to people that that are doing something similar to what you want to be doing. So those are also important things to be doing. We hire a large amount of employees just based on word of mouth and referrals.
Okay, very good. Okay, Jordan, we have been talking for a lot. I really have to say that it was a very interesting conversation about the situation in the United States, and also for professionals that are looking for a new job. So I really want to thank you for sharing with us, for your time. I can tell that you have a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge as well. So let me thank you again. Happy to be here with you. And there are a lot of people that's very grateful for you about the things, the tips that you have gave. So thank you again.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure to be on with you, Hugo, and thanks to everyone that watched, and wish you all the best.
Okay, thank you. Take a good
All right,
one.
take care.
Bye bye.